Chapter 571. When elderly lady was helped into the room, everyone was happily chatting. As soon as elderly lady Wang entered, the entire living room was dead silent. Everyone stood up to welcome elderly lady Wang and stole glances at each other. Seeing that elderly lady Wang didn't come with good intentions, they couldn't help exchanging glances. On the other hand, Arbor didn't say anything. When her mother stood up, she also stood up and bowed to elderly lady Wang with her mother before sitting down. No one could find fault with this etiquette. However, elderly lady Wang was furious and disliked the little stoic no matter how she looked at her. She had a stoic expression on her face all day, and it was the same for 7 to 8 years. It was as if someone owed her a huge debt. Xiao Sen, come to grandmother. After elderly lady Wang sat down, she beckoned to Chao. Senator Chao Sen bounced over, and elderly lady Wang pulled up his small hand. When elderly lady Wang saw that her grandson's hand was indeed still red and swollen, her expression changed abruptly, and she turned to berate Arbor. Eldest lass, so what if you're back? Is there a need to cause such a big commotion? This is your biological younger brother, not someone picked up from the streets. Look at you. You dragged him to someone else's house to torment him as soon as you came back, beating and scolding him. This old one and your parents aren't dead yet. It's not your turn to meddle in your younger brother's upbringing. Arbor's icy gaze shot straight at elderly lady Wang. The sharp glint in her gaze immediately frightened elderly lady Wang so much that her heart skipped a beat. Elderly lady Wang hadn't seen this lass for several years, but she didn't expect her gaze to be even sharper now. This gaze was practically able to cut open her old bones. However, elderly lady Wang currently valued this little grandson and couldn't bear to see him suffer any grievances. Even if she was a bit cowardly, she still couldn't resist standing up for her grandson. Donghe stood next to elderly lady Wang and pursed her lips as she secretly snickered, waiting to see eldest miss suffer. All of a sudden, eldest miss stood up abruptly, and a pair of icy eyes abruptly shifted to her. The front hall was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Donghe felt that her heart was about to leap out of her chest. In a flash, eldest young miss had already arrived in front of her. Without any explanation, a heavy slap landed on her cheek. This slap was truly beautiful. Donghe immediately opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood that was mixed with 2 teeth. She fell to the ground with a plop and started whimpering. Her pupils constricted and were filled with disbelief and terror. The old lady was so frightened by the servant girl's actions that her face drained of color. She thought that the servant girl had rushed up to hit her, but it turned out that the servant girl next to her had attacked her. She suddenly remembered that a few years ago, she had called upon the 2 grandnephews of the Wang family to fight with her. At that time, her granddaughter was only 7 years old. At that time, she had not been able to gain any advantage from her hands. Ever since she was 7 years old, this girl had always been fierce and no one dared to bully her. Old madam, is this what you taught? A little servant girl also dares to turn her nose up at me. What kind of thing is she? Arbor berated, scolding mercilessly. A servant girl, dressing herself up like a concubine, wearing red and green and acting coy all day long and showing off her right and wrong. She doesn't have the slightest bit of a servant girl's duty, causing the entire household to be in a foul atmosphere. Hurry and come. Immediately drag her away. Even if you want to sell her or beat her to death, make her disappear from my sight immediately. Don't disgust me. Chongzai immediately jumped out tactfully. With a wave of his hand, he instructed 2 manservants to go up and twist Donghe's arm. Chapter 572. Old madam was so infuriated that her chest heaved up and down repeatedly. She pointed at Arbor and said, "You," for a long time, but she couldn't utter a complete sentence. Her eyes were so furious that they were about to spit out flames. What right do you have to sell me? What right do you have to sell me? I'm old madam's person. Donghe's arms were twisted by the 2 manservants, and her eyes couldn't help but widen as she struggled non-stop. Her head of jewelry and jade shook, and her disheveled appearance cut a sorry figure. Arbor's bellyful of anger instantly exploded, and he fiercely kicked that last Donghe, sending her flying out from the two manservants' hands. She fell to the ground fiercely, and her head knocked against the thick stone slab, instantly creating a bloody hole. The surroundings were dead silent. All the servants stared at the enraged eldest miss with fear and trepidation. They only felt as if their hearts were gripped by a giant palm, and they were so frightened that they were somewhat unable to breathe. "What right do I have to sell you?" Abba shouted sternly, then turned to Steward Chong Zai and roared, "Go and bring her indenture contract here. Immediately." "Yes, yes, yes." Chong Zai hurriedly signaled to the manservants with his eyes. The group of people swiftly rushed to Longevity Court. Since she said she was Old Madam's person, then the indenture contract must be in Longevity Court. Old Madam looked on helplessly as that group of manservants accepted Abba's order without any moral integrity and openly ran to her court to search for the indenture contract. She was so angry that her chest kept panting, and she was almost unable to breathe. Not a moment later, a few quick-witted manservants dug out the indenture contract, and a thin stack was handed over to eldest Mississippi. "Do you see this? Your indenture contract is now in my hands. If I want you to live, you'll live. If I want you to die, you'll die for me." Abba waved the slave contract in his hand, scaring Dongha, who was curled up on the ground, to the point that she scrambled to the old lady's side and cried, "Old lady, save me, old lady, save me." That was a weeping pear blossom bathed in the rain, her coquettish eyes brimming with charm. That last Dongha's entire body was trembling. Seeing that Old Madam was panting heavily without making a sound, she looked up in Xiao Zhongbong's direction and crawled towards him while crying, "Master, master, save me." He knew that the old lady was up to no good again. This Dong He, judging from her enchanting appearance, was definitely someone who wasn't content with her marriage. Most likely, the matriarch had even promised her that if she found an opportunity, she might even promote her to be her father's bed warmer. Xiao Sen was ruined by you demons. Abba stepped forward and stomped on Dong He's back, directly making her lie there and unable to move. "Drag her out, flog her 30 times, and immediately sell her. From now on, this will be the outcome of whoever dares to talk nonsense again," Abba said coldly as he ruthlessly stomped on Dong He's back with his small foot. Dong He howled as she was dragged out. She never expected that she would become a part of the play when she only came to watch the show. Old Madam was so angry that she sat paralyzed on the ground. She pounded the ground and wailed, "My descendants are unworthy. My descendants are unworthy. Ah, I'm already so old, but I'm being humiliated by my granddaughter like this. I can't live anymore. I can't live anymore." As he spoke, he patted his chest and gasped for breath. Xiao Zhongbong awkwardly glanced at the Crown Prince, who was sitting calmly on the side. A pitch-black shadow had appeared at the Crown Prince's side at some point in time, and Hui Feng followed him like a shadow. The Crown Prince secretly sent him a look, and Hui Feng understood and left after receiving the order. Chapter 573. This was truly a farce. His mother had only stopped for a short while, so why did she start making a fuss again as soon as eldest miss returned? She clearly knew that his eldest miss wasn't someone who was easy to bully. This old lady. Xiao Zhongbong couldn't help but rub his aching head, secretly blaming his mother for being so meddlesome. He had already investigated the matter of his younger son being beaten. It was indeed due to his parents' negligence in disciplining him that he deserved to be beaten and punished. He had originally intended to personally make a trip to Sir Ren's residence tomorrow to apologize to him. What the hell is this old lady doing? She rushed over to rebuke his eldest miss just because a servant girl made a fuss in front of her. This was truly vexing. If it weren't for someone instigating them, no one would have thought of informing Old Madam today. Why would she come over on her own? Xiao Zhongbong wasn't a fool and connected the dots after thinking carefully. Wasn't this purely for His Highness the Crown Prince to see a joke with such a ruckus at home? Xiao Zhongbong sneaked a glance at the Crown Prince. Seeing that the Crown Prince had a calm expression and didn't say much, he couldn't help but relax slightly. After Hui Feng left to carry out his orders, the Crown Prince sneered inwardly. That servant girl called Dong something was extremely audacious and actually angered his darling Chow so much that her face flushed red. As such, she still wanted to smoothly report to the broker house after leaving the Chow estate? Dong he didn't know that her fate was already sealed. After being punished with 30 whips, she was thrown at the door like a rag, waiting for the broker house's people to come and take her away. She was full of resentment and indignation as she cursed. So what if the Chow estate's eldest miss is great? So what if the crown princess is great? One day, I will avenge today's grievances. Just you wait. MMPH, MMPH. The two servants disliked her and directly stuffed her mouth with a rag. Mother, please get up first. Wei Ziqin sat still with a cold expression, but Chow Zhongbong couldn't sit still anymore. He couldn't possibly watch his mother sit on the ground like a village woman and make a scene in front of the crown prince. You unfilial son. The old lady slapped Chow Zhongbong in the face. A few years ago, Chow Zhongbong's sincere heart was almost obliterated by Laonyang. Now, his heart had long since cooled down, so naturally, it would not hurt anymore. On the other hand, second uncle Chow Zhongxing was enraged. He stood up with a whoosh and said angrily, Mother, what are you doing? Have you had enough? You guys, why aren't you helping old madam back to longevity court? Ah, the son is unfilial and the daughter-in-law is unvirtuous. Ah, his descendants are unworthy. What's the point of me living? Just let me die. The old lady howled, wailing to the heavens. Chow Zhongbong got up quietly and ignored her. Arba coldly glanced at the old lady. Suddenly, he flipped his hand and took out a small bottle of liquid medicine from his inner world. He slowly walked over to the old lady and handed it over. Here, drink it. The old lady's eyes widened as she looked at him. Her lips involuntarily trembled. What is this? Poison. Drink a mouthful, and I guarantee that you'll die thoroughly. The old lady's face drained of color as she raised her head. Everyone in the courtyard was even more silent. They pursed their lips and didn't make a sound. The entire front hall was filled with a terrifying silence. Do you need me to find someone to wait on you? Arba asked coldly. You. The old lady was also a coward. When Arba was fierce to her, she became somewhat listless. Looking into Arba's emotionless eyes, her entire body couldn't help but tremble. Today, it ended at 10 p.m. Next week, 6 p.m. Chapter 574. Elderly lady stared blankly for a moment, then she started to throw a tantrum, rolling on the floor and bawling loudly. The son is unfilial, and the daughter-in-law is unvirtuous. Ah. You're going to drive this old woman to death. Ah. Arba looked on coldly from the sidelines, not saying a word. Her beautiful eyes were filled with ridicule as she stared at elderly lady. However, right at this moment, a manservant guarding the door rushed in and bowed. Master, Madam, Second Master. There's a group of people at the door, claiming to be Third Master's family, and they insist on barging in. We don't know their identities, so we've been temporarily blocked outside. When elderly lady heard the words, Third Master, it was as if her ears had been pricked. She instantly stopped throwing tantrums and raised her head to shriek. It's Zhongheng, Zhongheng's family is here. I want to see them. Zhongheng, my poor child. You're here to save your old mother. Wei Ziqin stood up and pulled the two children to the side, not bothering to pay attention to this wailing old woman. She was about to be annoyed to death by this old woman. She would bring Xiao Sen to her side every 2 to 3 days to raise him, but she didn't raise him well and spoiled him until he was full of bad habits. Every time she wanted to teach her son a lesson, this old woman would hurriedly protect him, not allowing her to hit or scold him. Look at what kind of child they've raised. If it weren't for her eldest daughter making such a scene today, she wouldn't have known that this little rascal actually bullied others outside. He deserved a beating. When she returned, she would have his father fiercely scold him. She had to make this child remember this lesson. At this moment, Wei Ziqin saw that elderly lady was throwing a tantrum, so she hurriedly handed the 2 half-grown children to the old mama beside her. "Nanny Lee, take the 2 young ladies and young master back to their rooms first. This place was truly too noisy." She didn't want her children to see this old woman's tantrum and learn from her in the future. "Yes, Mother." Chow Lin still wanted to stay and watch the show, but her mother glared at her. "Go back." Young ladies could learn anything, but learning how to throw tantrums and roll on the ground like this old woman was truly too uncultured. "Oh." Chow Lin pouted. Nanny Lee held her hand and dragged Chow Sin away. The 2 children were taken away. At this moment, the 2 servants at the entrance were beaten up and forced their way in. Although Chow Zhongheng was thin and weak, the muscles on his arms were bulging. It was obvious that he was a strength-type superhuman. Relying on his own strength, he rushed through the door at lightning speed and took the lead to barge into the Marquis's manor. Behind him, his wife and children, as well as Granny Nyo's family, followed. With the help of Granny Nyo's strong and healthy sons, Chow Zhongheng and his entourage swept away 1,000 troops along the way, beating up all the manservants of the Chow estate until they were looking for their teeth on the ground. The group of people dashed straight to the antechamber and stared at the large Marquis's mansion, as well as Chow Zhongbong's family's bright and beautiful appearance. Their eyes were red with jealousy. Heavens, what kind of life did they have on this journey? What kind of life did the first branch of the Chow family have? Chow Zhongheng never expected that his honest and wooden eldest brother, who was the most disliked by his mother, would actually achieve meteoric success today and be conferred the title of Marquis by the great king. Su Jiao's eyes were sharp, and she spotted Granny Nei Wang, who was lying on the ground. Wailing to the heavens and wailing, she rushed forward and hugged her mother, bawling her eyes out. "Mother! My dear mother! This daughter-in-law has finally found you. Mother, mother, mother." Elderly lady almost fainted from Su Jiao's wailing. Chapter 575. In addition, Su Jiao's filthy and stinky body carried her over. The stench assailed the nostrils as soon as she opened her mouth, and old madam almost fainted from nausea. Xiaoyun wanted to go up and help old madam up, but Su Jiao forcefully brushed her aside. She hugged old madam tightly and refused to let go, as if she had caught a life-saving straw. Su Jiao hugged old madam tightly and glared at everyone like a tiger eyeing its prey. Old madam had lived like a princess these past few years. Now that Su Jiao was strangling her with a stinky body, old madam was about to be strangled to death. "Mother, your son is unfilial. You took so long to find mother." Chow Zhongheng rushed over and knelt in front of his mother to cry. When old madam saw her son's shriveled appearance, grief welled up from her heart. She reached out to hold Chow Zhongheng's hands as tears streamed down her face. "Xiaolong, hurry up and greet grandmother." Kowtow to grandmother, Su Jiao berated her son. Chow Long hurriedly went up and cried, "Grandmother." The family of 3 gathered around old madam and cried fiercely. Old madam didn't despise Chow Long for being filthy. Looking at her plump grandson who had become as thin as a shriveled green bean, her heart ached so much that she almost fainted. When this large family rushed in, Aber had already ordered people to close the main door. Although there weren't many people on Minshun Avenue, no one in the Chow estate was willing to perform a drama with the main door open. Great, now that the 3 generations had performed a great show together, it was Granny Nyo who impatiently kicked Su Jiao's leg from the side, which made Su Jiao, who was still weeping bitterly, come back to her senses. "Mother, how have you been these years?" Su Jiao pretended to wipe her tears as she stole a glance at her sisters-in-law sitting on the side. The moment he saw this, he was immediately filled with anger. Wei Ziqin's face was fair and delicate, with only a few faint wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. She wore a lotus-colored jacket embroidered with peonies, paired with a flower-sprinkled pleated skirt of the same color. She looked like a rich and noble person. The most hateful thing was that Wei Ziqin had been sitting there without batting an eyelid from the beginning until now. No matter how Chow Zhongheng's family of 3 kicked up a fuss, she didn't say a word for a long time. This behavior infuriated Su Jiao into gnashing her teeth. In the past, when she was at home, she was the most popular in front of the old lady. In terms of food and clothing, how could Wei Ziqin compare with her? But now, her family of 3 was like beggars begging on the streets, while Wei Ziqin had been gloriously promoted to the Grand Marquis Estate's madam. She was dressed in silks and satins, and she was also eating exotic delicacies. This disparity was so great that it made Su Jiao's entire heart twist fiercely. The son is unfilial and the daughter-in-law is not virtuous. When the old lady heard her youngest daughter-in-law's question, she immediately cried again. Qiao Zhongbong seemed to be energized as he sprang to his feet and immediately reprimanded Qiao Zhongbong. Eldest brother, how can you be so unfilial? Look at how angry mother is. Have you taken good care of mother all these years? I told you that mother can't do without me to take care of her. Su Jiao squeezed out 2 drops of tears and said bitterly, Mother, how about letting your daughter-in-law and eldest grandson take care of you in the future? Okay. Elderly lady repeatedly agreed. But will eldest brother and the others welcome us? Su Jiao deliberately asked, and the corner of her eye twitched as she instigated Wei Ziqin with a glance. He dares not to welcome us. Elderly lady immediately roared with vigor. We're all brothers of the same family, blood-related brothers who won't leave even if they're beaten to death. If he can bear to part with that face, he'll chase you all out along with this old lady. Chapter 576. Wei Ziqin felt as if she had swallowed a fly. All these years, she had attended to this old woman in the morning and at night. Every time old madam was sick or in pain, she would stay by her bedside to take care of her, but she had never received a word of praise. Now, she was constantly saying that her son was unfilial and her daughter-in-law was unvirtuous. She was so aggrieved that her eyes reddened. This old woman didn't ask anything and just made the decision to let Qiao Zhonghing's family of 3 move in. Abba sat next to his mother and held her hand as he gazed at her comfortingly. He said softly, Mom, don't worry, I won't give them the chance to get involved. Wei Ziqin immediately patted her daughter. Although her eyes were red, her voice was resolute. Don't worry about this matter. Mom won't let them get what they want. She was now a legitimate 3rd-rank marchioness personally conferred by the present emperor and had the title of noble lady. It was absolutely impossible for Su Jiao to bully her and use her as a stepping stone like before. Besides, she wasn't stupid. Looking at today's situation, not only was Su Jiao's family delusional about moving into the Marquis' estate, even Granny Nyo's family, who had nothing to do with them, wanted to move in and reap benefits. How could she allow these rat droppings to come in and cause a great disturbance in the Qiao estate? Since Mom said so, Abba continued to sit and ignore the matter. He only rummaged through his storage talisman and took out an item, slapping it on the small table. Elderly lady turned her head when she heard the sound. When she saw the red paper on the table, she thought of something, and her eyelids suddenly twitched. As the mistress of the Marquis' estate, Wei Ziqin had already walked up and gazed coldly at Su Jiao, who was putting on a good show. 3rd sister-in-law, don't drag old madam into acting. No matter what you say, your family of 3, along with Granny Nyo's family, can't move into the Marquis' estate. This is an estate bestowed by the present emperor, and not just anyone can live in it. Su Jiao had already aged quite a bit from being exposed to the elements, and her face was even darker from anger now. She vigorously shook old madam's hand that was supporting her. Mother-in-law, look at what eldest sister-in-law is saying. She clearly doesn't want to acknowledge us as her relatives. Granny Qiao immediately trembled in anger. She turned around and pointed at Wei Ziqin as she cursed, Vicious woman! Where do you want to send my son and grandson? You vicious woman! Do you believe that I will immediately ask Zhongbong to divorce you? The head maidservant by Wei Ziqin's side, Chunying, was so angry that her face turned red. She had seen how madam treated old madam all these years. It was a good thing to be considerate. Which family's daughter-in-law could do this? Even a lowly servant like her couldn't stand it anymore. Old madam, she was really an ingrate. Abba coldly glanced at Qiao Zhonghing's family, who were jumping up and down. He picked up the piece of paper and walked to old Madam's side. He supported his mother and said, "Old Madam, don't tell them that my mother is now a third-rank noble lady. She's also not someone that can be divorced just because some random person says so. I really don't believe what you're saying. Moreover, the family division document is written clearly. Do you want to look through it again and recall it?" Old Madam Chow was so infuriated by Aba's eccentric tone that she fell backwards on the spot. Su Jiao made a big fuss as she supported Old Madam. She turned her head and angrily rebuked Aba. "Eldest young miss, is it? After not seeing you for a few years, your words have become even sharper and more unkind. There's no place for you to speak when the elders are talking here." Chapter 577. Aba coldly glanced at Su Jiao, and a faint disdain surfaced on her stoic face. "With my current status, I'm sorry, but I really do have a place to talk." She suddenly wanted to ruthlessly bully others. What should she do? It wasn't good to bully others. But facing these greedy and hypocritical faces, she really didn't want to continue enduring. Why should she let her mother suffer in front of these people? Could it be that if they endured, these people would be willing to let their family off? Su Jiao's expression abruptly changed. On the side, Qiao Long couldn't take it anymore and roared, "You little b*tch, you dare to speak to my mother like this?" He rushed up and aimed a slap at Aba's small face. In the past, Qiao Long was the entire family's ancestor. Who dared to throw a tantrum at him? Now that he entered the eldest branch's marquis estate and saw that the eldest branch's family, who could only wear cotton clothes and live in a run-down house, were all well-fed and well-fed, he truly felt extremely unbalanced. In front of grandmother, he, Qiao Long, was the greatest ancestor. Even if he slapped this eldest cousin's sister, she could only swallow her teeth and blood. However, her hand hadn't even touched a strand of Aba's hair when her face suffered a heavy slap. "Impudent!" Emo Lien flashed to Aba's side and pulled her into his embrace. He bellowed angrily, his expression abnormally furious. He really didn't know that when Qiao Qiao was in the village, she was bullied like this. This half-grown brat dared to lay a hand on his Jojo at this time. It was evident that he was used to being unruly at home and being violent. He truly had a lot of guts. Immediately afterwards, the main door abruptly opened, and several dozen guards armed with sabers and swords rushed in. They surrounded Granny Nyo's family and Qiao Zhonghing's family of three, and their sabers and swords flickered as they uniformly pointed their sharp points at the deathly pale Qiao Zhonghing and company. Qiao Zhonghing and company all looked emaciated and bewildered, but under the direction of so many sabers and swords, they could only raise their hands in surrender. He Tian led his troops to kneel in salute with a solemn expression. This subordinate greets the crown prince and crown princess. This subordinate failed to protect his master. The crown princess was shocked. "Please punish me, crown princess." Aba shook his head and motioned for him to get up. The eyelids of Qiao Zhonghing and the others twitched violently. They all wore dumbfounded expressions as they stared blankly at Prince Mo and their eldest niece, who were surrounded by people. Crown prince? Crown princess? What was going on? After they entered the city, they were like headless flies, trying to find out the whereabouts of the Qiao estate. However, they couldn't tell them clearly. The person who gave them directions didn't have good intentions either. He directly pointed them to the Marquis of Jiyuan's estate and said that it was the largest Qiao estate in the city. That person saw that they were dressed in rags and looked like beggars. In fact, he was just joking with them and deliberately wanted to brush them off. Who would have thought that he would really point them in the right direction? When he saw that Qiao Zhonghing's family of three were really relatives of the Marquis of Jiyuan's estate, the person who had been leading the way to watch a good show was so scared that his legs turned to jelly, and he had long since slipped away. Qiao Zhonghing and company went straight to the Qiao estate as soon as they arrived, so they didn't find out what was going on at all. They only knew that his older brother had been promoted and made a fortune, silently becoming a marquis. Qiao Zhongheng was very envious and thought that he had to bring his wife and children to live in the marquis's estate no matter what. No matter what, he had to cling to his big brother. When the time came, he might even be able to become an official. Now that the situation had suddenly changed, Qiao Zhongheng's family was scared out of their wits. Chapter 578. He Tion's furious shout was heard. A bunch of unruly commoners. Why aren't you paying your respects to the Crown Prince and Crown Princess when you see her? The family, including Granny Nyo's family, hastily knelt down and trembled like quails, not daring to make a fuss. The entire estate immediately fell silent. Qiao Long was enraged, and just as he opened his mouth to curse, *Tsh, Molien's icy gaze swept over, her pair of phoenix eyes exuding a baleful aura. Slap him. Dee don't. He's a child. A child is insensible and speaks without thinking. Please forgive him, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Seeing a eunuch walking over with a wide mahogany board, Su Jiao was scared out of her wits and hastily went up to protect her son. Speaking without thinking at such an age, that's your lack of upbringing as parents. Let him go. Emolien coldly said, punish him with 10 boards. Remember this in the future. Su Jiao howled and wanted to pounce forward, but she was immediately dragged away by 2 vicious soldiers. She screamed with reddened eyes as she watched Qiao Long being dragged away by a soldier to the side. The eunuch used the wide board to slap her son's mouth repeatedly. Qiao Long had never suffered such humiliation in his life. His mouth was hit again, and after the 10 slaps, one of his teeth fell out. He roared with a mouth full of blood, You little *Tsich, you really dared to hit me? Who do you think you are, you? You dared to treat me like this in front of grandmother? If I knew earlier, I would have strangled you to death back then. Su Jiao was so scared that her face was drained of color, and she frantically crawled towards her son while shrieking, Xiaolong, shut up, shut up. Overwhelming fury surged in Emolien's eyes, and she raised her hand to shout angrily, What are you still standing there for? You refused to mend your ways and spoke rudely against the Crown Princess. Drag them out and beat them to death. The Marquis of Jiyuan's estate instantly quieted down. However, that silence only lasted for a split second before it was immediately filled with Su Jiao's piercing wails. No. Su Jiao scrambled in front of Emolien and Arba. She knelt and kowtowed. Your Highness, please spare my life. Your Highness, please spare my life. When a child speaks without a filter, it is the foolish woman who has not been properly educated. When I return, I will definitely punish him severely and properly educate him. Your Highness, please spare his life. She looked up and saw Prince Mo pursing his lips and not saying a word. She quickly rolled over to Arba, wanting to hug his leg. Niece, miss, no, Crown Princess, Your Highness the Crown Princess. I beg you to spare your younger brother's life for the sake of the Qiao family's old master, who shares the same origin. I beg you, Crown Princess, Crown Princess. Arba's face was cold. Emolien looked down at her and rubbed her head. She waved her hand impatiently and said, Drag her out. 2 soldiers immediately dragged Qiao Long to the front yard. Su Jiao's vision darkened, and she repeatedly begged for mercy, her head banging against the ground. Granny Nyo and company were so frightened that they couldn't make a sound. The young lady kneeling behind Granny Nyo was around 15 or 16 years old. She secretly looked up at the enraged Crown Prince with an intoxicated expression. Was this the current Crown Prince? He was so young and handsome, and he also had so much power and influence. Wei Mingli's maiden heart thumped wildly, and she was practically unable to shift her gaze away. Look, such a hoodlum and scoundrel eldest brother Wei's family could only kneel in front of His Highness the Crown Prince, not daring to utter a single word. Madame Nei's son, who was kneeling next to Wei Mingli, quickly tugged at her daughter and had her quickly lower her head. Chapter 579. Madame Nei's son was timid. In front of the Crown Prince, she was alarmed and scared when she saw her daughter staring at that person's face without any etiquette. She was also worried that her daughter would be ignorant and cause trouble, so she quickly tugged at her to make her bow her head. Of her 3 daughters, 2 had starved to death, so she only had this one daughter left. Second young Master Wei had also died of illness 2 years ago, so the mother and daughter had to rely on the eldest branch to survive. They had already lived in fear and trepidation, so she didn't want to cause any more trouble now. How could she have known that a young girl's yearning for love was actually fantasizing about the crown prince at this very moment? Wei Mingli completely ignored Madame Nei Sun's reminder as she stared fixedly at the crown prince. Her gaze was too sharp, so Auber immediately looked over vigilantly. His cold and clear eyes swept over Wei Mingli as he said in displeasure, "Why do you keep staring at me?" Everyone. The crown prince's pursed lips turned up slightly. For some reason, he suddenly recalled Koita-sek's Chi-Mei's sorry state back then. His darling was as funny as ever. She always felt that the other girls' gazes were on her. Madame Nei Sun was so terrified that she immediately pressed her daughter's head down. With a bang, Wei Mingli was forced to kowtow. Her eyes were filled with indignation and resentment as she forcefully pushed Madame Nei Sun's hand away. She felt that Madame Nei Sun was incompetent and made her lose face in front of everyone. She didn't even raise her head as she tightly clutched her skirt with both hands and bit her lip. Auber felt bored and turned to look at Qiao Long, who had already been dragged to the front door. He saw that Qiao Long's hands were clinging tightly to the door, and he also knew fear now. His cries shook the heavens as he begged for mercy. Old Madame also didn't have the energy to make a fuss at this moment. She collapsed on the ground and shouted intermittently, "I'm going to be driven to death by my own granddaughter." Driven to death. Xiaoyun reached out in a panic, wishing that she could cover old Madame's mouth. His Highness the Crown Prince was already in a thunderous rage, yet old Madame still dared to howl here. Did she really think that His Highness wouldn't kill a shrew like her? Just now, Third Old Master and his family had insulted the Crown Princess. It wasn't as if they hadn't seen what happened to them. The Crown Prince doted on the eldest miss so much that he wouldn't let her suffer any grievances. The only reason His Highness was showing mercy to an old woman like her was probably because of the Marquis of Jiyuan and his wife. Old Madame slapped her knees and cried, "There's no place for us in this Marquis's estate. I can't stay in this Marquis's estate anymore. When you become an official, brothers and sisters will kill each other." What kind of sin did this old woman commit? I can't live anymore. Auber suddenly pulled the Crown Prince's sleeve. The Crown Prince lowered his head and glanced at her. Seeing the impatience in her eyes, he immediately understood. He waved his hand and said, "Wait." The 2 soldiers then pulled Qiao Long over like a sack and threw him in front of the Crown Princess. Qiao Long's entire body trembled and he had already peed his pants in fright. When he fell to the ground, the smell of urine wafted out. Auber reflexively shrank into Emolienne's embrace and covered her mouth and nose with her sleeve, her eyes filled with disdain and contempt. "Old Madam, since you can't live in the Marquis's estate anymore, then this Crown Prince will permit you to leave the estate and live with the Qiao family's 3rd branch. Come, each of the Qiao family's 3rd branch will be punished with 30 planks. Throw Old Madam and the 3rd branch out. In the future, they are not allowed to take half a step into the Marquis's estate. Violators will be beheaded." Chapter 580. When this verbal edict was passed down, it immediately caused the entire court to howl in anguish. Old Madame was even more dumbfounded. When did she sincerely want to leave the Marquis's estate? Where could she go to live such comfortable days after leaving the Marquis's estate? She had only casually howled a few times. How could it be taken for real? She had just moved from a small estate to such a large Marquis's estate and hadn't enjoyed enough of the good days, yet the Crown Prince actually issued a verbal edict for her to move out and live outside with her youngest son and daughter-in-law? How could she accept this? She wasn't leaving. Where could her old bones go? Seeing that Old Madame was about to shout, Su Jiao truly reacted quickly and used her dirty black hand to forcefully cover Old Madame's mouth. Only by bringing Old Madame along with her would she be able to stay connected to the eldest branch in the future. Otherwise, after being thrown out this time, how could she continue to maintain a relationship with the eldest branch in the future? Su Jiao wasn't stupid. On the contrary, she was very shrewd. She knew that as long as she held Qiao Zhongbong's mother in her hands, with that man's honest and considerate personality, there would be a day when he would give in. At that time, their third branch would definitely be able to return. Su Jiao pulled her son Qiao Long and her husband Qiao Zhongheng along as the family of three prostrated themselves on the ground and humbly kowtowed several times. Then, they were unceremoniously picked up by the soldiers and beaten 30 times each before being directly thrown out of the gate. Granny Nyo's eyes darted around, and she had just opened her mouth to call out, "Zichin, I'm a cow from the same village as you." But she was immediately swept over by the crown prince's cold gaze, and she was so frightened that she swallowed back her bellyful of words and knelt on the ground with weak limbs. Where did this idle person come from and make a fuss? Throw them out. The crown prince coldly reprimanded. Immediately, 7 or 8 soldiers swarmed over like tigers and wolves. Without any courtesy, they swung their clubs at Granny Nyo's family a few times. Dragging the group of people who were making a fuss, they directly shoved and threw them out of the main door, rolling together with Qiao Zhongheng's family of 3. Yo yo yo! Granny Nyo stroked her old waist and cried out in grief. Due to the crown prince's terror, she didn't dare to curse out loud and could only grumble in her heart. What an unlucky year! They originally wanted to follow Su Jiao's family into the marquis's estate to enjoy themselves, but they didn't expect Su Jiao's family to be so incompetent that they actually angered the current crown prince and were directly swept out the door. Oh, Granny Nyo is so angry, so angry. Wei Mingli was screaming madly in her heart. She was a young lady in her late 20s, yet she had been grabbed and thrown out of the door by those ferocious soldiers just now. Her reputation had been swept to the ground, and there was nothing left of it. It really made her heart shatter into pieces, and it was unbearable. The cold-looking crown prince glanced over with a terrifying gaze, causing everyone present to shut their mouths. Wei Mingli's heart was restless, as if a cat had clawed at it. She cast a jealous and hateful glance at the marquis's estate's tightly shut main door, her heart filled with unwillingness. "Grandmother, are we just going to be kicked out of the house like this and not do anything?" Wei Mingli twisted her sleeves and bit her lower lip, her words full of unwillingness. Her mother, Madame Sun, was shocked. She raised her hand and slapped her heavily on the back. "You're asking for trouble. How dare you spout nonsense? You were truly too audacious just now. You actually dared to stare at His Highness like this? Aren't you afraid of angering His Highness and beheading you all at once? Oh, isn't it because the young lady's heart is rippling? TSK. Shameless, shameless." Chapter 581. Don't tell me you're delusional enough to think that you can win His Highness's favor with your looks? Eldest brother Wei's wife, Madame Nei Bo, was fuming because she hadn't gotten anything good out of the Marquis's estate. When she heard Madame Nei Sun's words, she immediately mocked and ridiculed Madame Nei Sun and her daughter as usual. How could Wei Mingli suppress her anger? She pointed at Madame Nei Bo and shouted angrily, "What do you mean? What's wrong with my looks? Who am I ugly to look at? You look like a crooked date, yet you still dare to mock others? Don't worry about it." Madame Nei Bo flew into a rage, while Madame Nei Sun was so frightened that she kept quiet out of fear. She tugged at her daughter's clothes and urged her to shut up. "You little B***tch who doesn't know how to choose your words. Is this how you speak to your elders? How could Madame Nei Bo be trifled with?" The second branch and their daughter had humbly relied on the eldest branch for a living all this while. Now, they actually dared to defy her authority? How could Madame Nei Bo tolerate this? She rushed forward and grabbed Wei Mingli's hair with her broad and fat body. Slap, slap. She slapped Wei Mingli's face twice. "I'm hitting you for not knowing your manners. You little B***tch, you still dare to take advantage of me." Ah! Wei Mingli only felt pain from Madame Nei Bo's fingernails scratching her left cheek. When she touched it, there was a trace of blood. She immediately felt angry, hateful, scared, and furious. "Little B***tch, you're delusional to think you can fly to the top. Why don't you look at your own face in the mirror? Only a blind man would fancy you. That's the high and mighty crown prince. Who do you think you are? Don't say that other people look down on you when you're the one who's cheap. Madame Nay Beau's mouth was as sharp and unkind as she could be, scolding Wei Mingli until she cried in anger. Madame Nay Sun was also clumsy with her words. She didn't dare to argue with Madame Nay Beau, so she pulled her daughter's hand and urged, all right. Don't talk so much. Don't quarrel with your eldest aunt." Wei Mingli only felt a chill in her heart. She abruptly flung Madame Nay Sun's hand away and screamed shrilly, "Get lost! Are you still my mother? Seeing your own daughter being bullied like this, you still have the face to persuade me not to say anything? It was that old woman who was scolding me. I hate you! I hate you! I hate you to death!" Wei Mingli burst into tears. She turned around and ran like mad, disappearing in a short while. Madame Sun was so scared that she trembled all over. She licked her lips and begged Madame Beau, "Sister-in-law, don't be angry with a child. You see, it's our first time in the capital. There are many adults here. What if Mingli gets lost? Let's chase after her and look for her. If you want to find it, go find it yourself. That little B***tch was just lustful. Why did she care about her? She might have wanted to leave us a long time ago and go out to find a random man." Madame Beau shook off Madame Sun's hand and looked at her with disdain. Madame Sun's face turned pale and her lips trembled, but she subconsciously did not dare to refute. "What are you all arguing about?" This was Minshun Avenue, at the place where the officials gathered. If there was nothing important, ordinary people were forbidden to stay here and make noise. Go. Everyone, leave quickly." The city guards who heard the news ran over and chased them away without a second word. Elderly lady howled and wanted to go up to bang on the Marquis Estate's main gate, but Su Jiao grabbed her hand forcefully. "Mother, let's leave this place first. We can discuss this at length after we leave." The group of people came in high spirits and left dejectedly. Chapter 582. When she was escorted away from Minshun Boulevard by the city guards, elderly lady was still staring at the tightly shut doors of the Marquis' estate, unwilling to give up. Su Jiao didn't say anything and only turned her head to glance at the Marquis' estate's lintel, her eyes flickering with greed. She understood the eldest branch's husband and wife too well. They simply couldn't harden their hearts. She reckoned that in less than 3 days, Qiao Zhongbang and his wife would definitely be reluctant to part with their mother and come visit. This old fart was a bargaining chip in her hand. As long as she had this old fart, she could guarantee that the eldest branch's husband and wife would be docile. So, how could she allow her mother to continue loitering in the Marquis' estate? Even if she had to seize her mother, she had to seize her mother to her side. Su Jiao snorted lightly and flung elderly lady's hand away after leaving the Marquis' estate. Their family of 3 had just been beaten, so they couldn't walk nimbly. Her son, Qiao Long, was even more miserable. Not only was his but severely injured, his mouth was also nearly smashed with a bamboo plank. This made Su Jiao's heart ache, and she couldn't help but hate Abba to death in her heart. That rotten little B***tch. Relying on His Highness the Crown Prince's favor, she dared to torment her precious son like this. One day, she would make her taste the pain of being humiliated like this. Humph, a man's favor came and went quickly. That person was the Grand Crown Prince of the Mo Kingdom, second only to one and above all. Could it be that he could spend his days guarding a little B***tch like you? There would definitely be a chance for her to fall out of favor. At that time, she would definitely make you pay with your blood. Elderly lady started to pant after walking a few steps. She had been pampered all these years and lived like a prince. If she wasn't in a palanquin, she would be in a sedan chair, so there was no need for her to walk. Su Jiao turned to glance at elderly lady and cursed this cursed old woman in her heart. However, she still put on a virtuous appearance and helped elderly lady to Granny Nyo's family's donkey cart. At this time, she still had to rely on this old woman. It would be fine when she returned to the Marquis's estate one day. Before Qiao Zhongbang and his wife came looking for her, she had to serve this old woman well and let this old woman know that she was a very filial person. It was just that this time, Su Jiao's scheme was probably going to fall through completely. Qiao Zhongbang had been disappointed in his mother over the years. He would never take the initiative to bring his mother back. Moreover, since the Crown Prince had given the order to move the Empress Dowager out of the Marquis' manor so that his third brother's family could be filial to her, he wasn't stupid enough to go with the flow. As for Wei Ziqin, she had long given up hope. She wished that the Empress Dowager would go far away and never disturb them again. At this time, Su Jiao still didn't know. Along with Qiao Zhongheng and his wife, they had been doing their best to show filial piety to this old lady along the way. They took care of every aspect, which comforted old Madame. He thought that even though his eldest and second sons were unfilial and he had been chased out of the Marquis' household by his descendants at an old age, at least he still had a filial youngest son and daughter-in-law. It couldn't be considered too bad. After the group of ragged beggars were escorted out of Minshun Boulevard, they looked at the people coming and going on the streets and practically didn't know where to go. They didn't have money, and they were almost out of grain. They didn't even have a place to stay at this time. What should they do? Qiao Zhongheng was already regretting it at this time. He thought that he should have bitterly begged to hug his eldest brother's thigh instead of acting like a big shot and acting like a tyrant. Chapter 583. As for Wei Mingli, after she impulsively ran away from Minshun Avenue, she ran madly along the road. As she ran, she started to regret it. The road ahead was boundless, and she didn't know where to go. Wei Mingli dazedly looked at the unfamiliar faces coming and going, and her footsteps gradually slowed down. Suddenly, she was knocked over by a passing carriage, and her entire body crookedly fell to the ground. She didn't feel the ice-cold ground in her impression, and instead threw herself into a warm embrace filled with ambergris. "Miss, are you all right?" A man's voice sounded beside her ear. Although it wasn't as magnetic and pleasant as His Highness the Crown Prince's, it was still passable. Wei Mingli looked up and met a pair of slightly swollen large eyes with thick eyebrows. The man's face wasn't the slightest bit handsome and could only be considered regular features. It truly couldn't compare to His Highness the Crown Prince, who had slightly raised phoenix eyes and a gorgeous appearance. Wei Mingli couldn't help but be taken aback. Why did she link everything to the Crown Prince? Her small face couldn't help but blush slightly. Could it be that she really was a young girl in love? "I've startled Mississippi," the man's gaze flickered as he looked at Wei Mingli, and he extended his hands to help her up from the ground. Wei Mingli was a bit embarrassed by the other party's scorching gaze. Although she came from the village, she was still a young lady in her late 20s. She was a bit shy from the man's gaze, and her neck drooped. Just as Granny Niu, Su Jiao, and the others were searching the streets for a place to stay, the Qiao family in the Marquis' estate finally had a harmonious and beautiful reunion dinner. Without the disturbance of unrelated people, everyone was in a cheerful mood, and the meal was very sumptuous. A little later, the Crown Prince took his leave and very naturally held the little fellow's small hand as they left the Qiao estate together. It was only after they boarded the carriage that Arba rolled her eyes at him. She clearly didn't have to return to the palace, but this person insisted on bringing her along. This guy had completely let go at this time and didn't even avoid her younger brothers and sisters. He held hands whenever he wanted and hugged whenever he wanted. He truly did as he pleased. "You can do whatever you want in your own home." The Crown Prince smiled as he carried the little fellow onto his lap. He hugged her waist and whispered into her ear, "You must be tired after a long day. Do you want to sleep for a while?" Arba felt his ears warm up and reached out to rub them. The Crown Prince let out a muffled laugh. He pulled down her little hand and helped her rub it. His gesture was very gentle. After he was done, he chuckled. "Your ears are itchy? What a bad person." Arba turned his head and glared at him, but their faces were so close that when Arba turned his head, his little mouth brushed past the corner of his mouth. It was as gentle as a feather, quietly plucking at his heartstrings. Our dear Chow Mu's entire body froze. The Crown Prince wasn't any better than her. He stared at her in a daze, deep whirlpools churning in the depths of his eyes. The little fellow saw that the situation was not good, and wanted to run away after teasing him. He struggled on his knees, and was about to break free from his embrace and roll to the other side of the carriage. The Crown Prince scooped her back and fixed her on his lap. He lowered his head and exhaled a mouthful of cold medicinal power into her ear. Want to run? A certain person instantly realized that her little hands and feet were somewhat unable to move. A pair of watery eyes widened as she angrily glared at his face that was close to hers. This guy was an apothecary, so how could he carelessly use medicinal power on her? What kind of medicinal power was this? Chapter 584. Heavens! Why was the drug so strong? It made her feel weak all over, and she couldn't even lift her arms and legs? Arba glared at him. Oh, you're definitely not convinced by using medicine like this. I'll let you use talismans on me first. The Crown Prince grinned as he pressed his face against hers and exhaled softly. The great Crown Princess was instantly revived. She took out a few talismans and pasted them all on the Crown Prince's forehead. The talismans floated around the Crown Prince's head. After a while, the Crown Prince burst out laughing. How annoying! These talismans were completely ineffective on him. In a fit of anger, Arba reached out and circled his neck without thinking. She opened her mouth and bit his chin. She clearly felt the Crown Prince's body tense up, and her little mouth opened. His slender index finger caressed her little face, and he chuckled softly. You bit the wrong place, baby. Chow Mu raised her head, and her small and round chin abruptly landed in his palm. She was just scratching her head in bewilderment when she suddenly felt her mouth being filled with warmth. In her daze, she heard the man chuckle lightly. Bite here, darling. Harder. Darling Chow quivered and almost jumped up, her head hitting the roof of the carriage. Heh, but that was just a thought. Her entire body was weak from the effects of the medicine, and she couldn't lift her arms or legs at all. This bastard! What was he doing? Wasn't he kissing her? Being glared at by a pair of round eyes, the Crown Prince couldn't help but laugh and couldn't kiss her anymore. He scooped her into his arms. You keep staring at me. Do you still want to bite me? Here, I'll let you bite. Arba. This baby suddenly doesn't want to talk to you anymore. If you don't want to talk, then I'll continue kissing my baby. The Crown Prince moved closer to her little mouth. Our dear Chow Mu raised her hand and pressed it against his chest. Only then did she realize that she could move her arms and legs. Wah, this bad guy. One moment he could make her move, the next moment he made her unable to move. He was so annoying. She tugged at his long hair angrily. Didn't you say that it was just a title and nothing else? He revealed his wolf's tail so quickly. Wasn't he afraid that she would bite him? No. She couldn't bite him either. Once she did, he would take advantage of her. It's just a title. The Crown Prince looked at her innocently. After confirming their status, it was only natural for them to kiss, hug, and throw themselves at each other. You were the one who pounced on me and bit me. Do you still want to bite? Baby, I'll let you bite me whenever you want. Arba. That does seem to be the case. Don't. Arba looked at him speechlessly, his little stoic face unable to maintain a straight face. The Crown Prince was amused. He reached out to hug the little fellow and caressed her. He looked at her with a face full of regret. Next time, if you want a bite, just bite as much as you want. Don't hold it in, okay? I really don't want to talk to you anymore. By the way, baby, aren't you going to give me a gift in return? Emolien hugged his little body and shook it gently. Chow Mu's watery eyes abruptly widened. What? Why was he giving a gift in return again? Just as she was thinking about when she owed that fellow a gift, he reached out and lifted her little chin. The two of them stared at each other, their gazes glued together. His slightly curved thin lips inched closer and closer to her face as her eyes widened. Something was wrong. Wasn't it just a title? Why were they kissing so frequently? This was only the first day of the betrothal. Whoosh! An arrow pierced through the air and suddenly streaked past her eyes, shattering the seductive atmosphere in the carriage. Chapter 585. The Crown Prince's gaze sharpened, and he took the opportunity to throw the little thing under his body to protect her. With a flick of his sleeve, the arrowhead was shattered into pieces. The countless arrows that followed were all blocked by the defensive barrier that he had set up. Whistling sounds came from outside. Tion's group of soldiers had already started fighting with the black-clothed men swarming in from all directions. Abba lifted her little head from his embrace and saw that his thin lips were tightly pursed. His eyes were sharp, and his expression was tainted with a trace of killing intent. It was obvious that he was extremely furious. Emolien! She couldn't help but call out. The Crown Prince lowered his head and lightly pecked her pink, moist lips. Don't be afraid. Wait for me to kill them. A bunch of blind idiots. They actually dared to disturb his beautiful moment of tenderness with his wife in his arms. They all deserved to die. Arbor pursed her little lips and thought, how can you tell that this baby is afraid? As they spoke, another storm of arrows flew over like thunder, striking the defensive barrier with a pitter-patter. The entire carriage was covered by the defensive barrier. Other than the first arrow that passed through the curtain, the rest were blocked. The carriage was not damaged at all. Emolien couldn't help but feel a little gloomy. It was all his fault for being so engrossed in holding the little fellow that he didn't notice that someone had set up an ambush at Huabei Gate. At this moment, the commotion outside Huabei Gate had already alarmed a group of patrolling Imperial Guards. A large group of soldiers was rushing over at top speed. The Crown Prince tightly pursed his lips and scooped up the little fellow's body. He swiftly darted out of the carriage, and a fierce look flitted across his phoenix eyes. In an instant, all the hundreds and thousands of arrows that were shooting towards the two of them stopped in midair and started to vibrate slightly. Along with a light gurgling sound, the hundreds and thousands of arrows abruptly turned around and flew towards the roofs where the ambush was set up. Ah! Ear-piercing screams continuously sounded, accompanied by black shadows falling from the roofs. Abba turned to look at Tion and the others who were fighting with dozens of assassins. With a wave of her little hand, a handful of talismans appeared in her hand. The intermediate blue stun talisman was scattered in the wind. It was aimed at the group of black-clothed assassins. From the activation of the talisman to the stun, it was almost done in one breath. It was as if the man in black was drunk. His footsteps were unsteady as he swayed back and forth. He couldn't even hold the sword in his hand. When Tion and the others saw this, they immediately took the opportunity to kill the assassins. One of them saw that the situation was not good. He turned around and was about to escape, but he was hit in the chest by a flame. Ah! He screamed. Then he fell to the ground, his head heavily knocked on the thick stone floor. At this moment, the patrolling Imperial Guards had already arrived. When they saw that it was the Crown Prince who had been attacked, they were all scared out of their wits and knelt down to accept their punishment. Tion rushed over and knelt down on one knee. Your Highness, I have failed in my duty. I didn't notice the assassin's ambush. Emolien waved her hand at him and said, They've taken some medicine to hide their scent. Bring some people over to take a look and clean up the archers on the roof. Yes. Tion paused and asked, Do you want to leave them alive? This prince knows who did it. Emolien curled her lips and shook her head non-committally. Clean it up. Yes. Tion led a group of Imperial Guards to clean up the mess where the archers were lying in ambush. Emolien held Aber's little hand and walked to the black-clothed man who was rolling on the ground and clutching his chest. Chapter 586. The two of them looked at each other, then walked up to the howling black-clothed man and looked at him coldly. With a flick of her finger, Xiao Mu took out a blue talisman and struck the person on the ground. After the blue light flashed past, the man suddenly quivered and fell silent. "Who sent you to assassinate me?" Arbor asked coldly. The assassin rolled on the ground and opened his mouth to say, "Tu." Xiao Mu instantly felt her body lighten. Emolienne reacted extremely quickly and tossed out a ball of fire that enveloped the assassin's entire body. At the same time, Qiao Qiao, who was hugging him, swiftly retreated backwards. Boom! The assassin suddenly self-destructed in the circle of fire that Emolienne had set up. What happened? Arbor's eyes widened. She turned to look at Emolienne, whose face was solemn and body tense. Emolienne hugged the little girl and patted her back. She said softly, "It's okay." Arbor was confused. Why would my dictum talisman make him self-destruct? The dictum talisman was from the fourth jade slip of the golden talisman jade tome, just like the Vajra talisman and the invisibility talisman. With a single dictum talisman, anyone with a lower cultivation level than her would obediently speak the truth. That was why she had used the dictum talisman to ask about the assassin's identity. She didn't expect that the man would self-destruct. "It has nothing to do with your talisman." Emolienne hugged the little girl tightly and patted her back comfortingly. This person must have had a strand of his soul extracted and a hint planted in him. Anyone who tried to reveal the mastermind would be immediately detected and forced to self-destruct. So what did he mean by "tu"? Arbor believed that her hearing was good. She had heard the word that the black-clothed man had spat out clearly. Emolienne curled his lips, and he whispered into her ear. At this time, He Tian and the others who were attracted by the huge explosion hurriedly turned back. When he saw that his two masters were unharmed, He Tian heaved a sigh of relief. In his heart, he cursed the 18 generations of the assassin's ancestors. Why did he have to stir up trouble? Couldn't he just stop for a while? The news of the crown prince being attacked at Huabei Gate quickly spread to the ears of the great king, the queen, and the other concubines of the imperial harem. They all sent people to express their condolences. The great king and queen summoned the crown prince for questioning that very night. Xiao Mu naturally didn't join in the fun. After Emolienne sent her back to the Eastern Palace, she washed up and climbed into bed. At this time, the great king and queen summoned the crown prince into the main hall. They looked at him carefully before asking, "Who tried to assassinate you? Do you know? Your humble servant failed to protect you. Please punish me, great king." He Tian stepped forward and knelt down to beg for forgiveness. He Tian did not neglect his duty. "It was my son's carelessness," the crown prince said calmly. The queen glared at her son somewhat angrily and turned to ask He Tian, "Did you find out where the assassins came from?" He Tian immediately looked like he wanted to say something, but stopped himself. The great king said angrily, "What are you stopping yourself for? Speak." "Your Majesty, great king and queen, please forgive me. Your humble servant found this on the assassin's body, but your humble servant didn't dare to say." He Tian presented a crescent-shaped jade pendant with both hands. The great king snatched the jade pendant from him and suddenly became furious. "Guards, go and invite noble consort Lin and the third prince here." Emolienne's expression was leisurely. When Queen Zhao saw this, she became angry again. She pulled her son and said, "Imperial Mother heard everything. Today's incident happened because you accompanied that girl from the Qiao family back to her maternal home." Chapter 587. When Emolienne heard this, he was immediately unhappy with his mother's disdainful tone. "Imperial Mother, what Qiao family's lass? That's your son's daughter-in-law. The crown princess that imperial father personally conferred upon her." The great king's mouth twitched at the side. He hated that he couldn't go up and give this son a slap on the back of his head. He was such a swindling brat all the time. Was he willing to issue this imperial edict? That was because he was threatened and forced. That day, the words that this damned son said to him in the imperial study, if he said it out loud, his mother would be angered to death. On account of their relationship as husband and wife, he was too embarrassed to tell Queen Zhao that her son was such a swindling person. In the end, the great king was infuriated when Queen Zhao received the news early this morning. She rushed to his study and angrily scolded him. At this moment, the great king was still suppressing a bellyful of anger. He didn't have a single day of rest. Was this something that couldn't be said? She only said one sentence about that Chow family's lass, and her son immediately jumped out to defend her? The queen's long, shapely eyebrows shot up as she jabbed her son's forehead with a finger. Mother hasn't said anything about you yet. You and your imperial father rashly issued an imperial edict to that Chow family's lass. Do you still have me, your mother, in your eyes? Queen Zhao was really about to be angered to death. On her end, she had been very enthusiastic and had been helping the crown prince choose the young misses from various manors. All right, on this end, her husband and son didn't say anything. An imperial edict came out of nowhere and directly decided on the crown prince's consort at lightning speed. The key point was that she had never seen this crown princess from beginning to end. She also didn't know what her character was like. In her heart, she had two good candidates for the crown princess that she liked. Now, it was all ruined by this father and son pair. Imperial mother, your son naturally respects you very much in his heart. Mo Lien was all smiles as he helped his mother to the side to sit down. But your son's daughter-in-law is also very more important. If your son can't marry this daughter-in-law, your son will have to be a bachelor for the rest of his life. The great king picked up a book and threw it at the back of the crown prince's head. This unfilial son. He really dared to shoot his mouth off in front of his mother. He did not even mention such shameless words in front of his queen. As expected, Queen Zhao widened her eyes in shock. She looked her son up and down, as if she wanted to see if he was telling the truth or not. Mo Lien tilted his head and dodged the book that his father threw at him. He looked at his mother innocently. Queen Zhao saw that his expression was exceptionally serious, and she was completely curious about that girl from the Chow family. In Queen Zhao's heart, her son was the most outstanding child in the entire kingdom. There was no girl in the world who could match up to her outstanding son. In the past 20 years, he had never seen him care so much about any woman around him. This crown princess, not to mention that his son had begged for her, why was he so protective of her? How curious. In short, you put yourself in danger for that girl from the Chow family. Mother is not happy. Queen Zhao said in dissatisfaction. Tomorrow night at the palace banquet, you should let mother see that good wife of yours, right? Mo Lien nodded and supported Queen Zhao as she said, Mother, my wife is still young. When the time comes, don't scare her. Your son only has this one daughter-in-law. If you scare her away, your son will have to be a bachelor for the rest of his life. Queen Zhao was both anxious and angry. She jabbed her son fiercely. You child, you talk nonsense all day long. The great king also glared at the crown prince in annoyance. Just then, they heard an announcement from outside. Great king, noble consort Lin and the third prince have arrived. Tell them to get their asses in here. The great king roared angrily. Today's update was not finished yet. The remaining time was estimated at 10:30 p.m. Chapter 588. A woman dressed in a gold-embroidered brocade jacket and a lily-colored dress, who was close to 50 but had maintained herself well, was currently gracefully walking into the main hall. Behind her was a man in his late 20s, wearing an azure robe. His long hair was tied up high, and he could be considered fair and clean. This concubine greets the great king. Greetings to the queen. You raised a good son. Without another word, the great king picked up an inkstone and smashed it at noble consort Lin's head. Noble consort Lin immediately turned pale with fright. She abruptly prostrated herself on the ground and trembled as she asked, May I know why the great king is so angry? Smack. The inkstone smashed at noble consort Lin's feet, scaring her so much that she paled. You still have the face to ask us. The great king paced back and forth on the steps, stamping with rage as he said, Why don't you go ask your good son? Third son Mo Ting immediately knelt down and repeatedly cried out for injustice. Royal father, royal father. What exactly did son do? Why are you treating royal mother like this? Is this yours? The great king picked up the crescent-shaped jade pendant from the table and threw it at Mo Tang's face with a smack. We remember that this was a present your royal mother gave you in public on your 10th birthday. Is this the one? It's even engraved with your Tang character on the back. Mo Tang's face was filled with panic as he hurriedly cried out, Royal father, why is this jade pendant here? I already lost this jade pendant 2 days ago. Royal father is wise. How could the great king believe his nonsense? He stepped forward and kicked his son to the ground. You disgraceful thing! Of all times, it fell on the assassin who tried to assassinate your 6th brother? Do you think we're easy to fool? Mo Tang's eyes widened in horror. He naturally also received news of the Crown Prince's assassination attempt at Huabei Gate, and at that time, he even rejoiced in his misfortune in the palace. He didn't expect that this inexplicable fire would burn him all of a sudden. What was going on? He didn't do anything. This jade pendant really had already disappeared 3 days ago. How would he know how this jade pendant would appear at the scene of the Crown Prince's assassination attempt? Someone must have framed him. Father. The unlucky Prince Mo Tang shuffled a few steps on his knees and hugged the old great king's thigh with tears streaming down his face. He cried bitterly, It's really not a son. Your son can swear to the heavens that if I really send someone to assassinate 6th brother, I will be struck by lightning and die a horrible death. Imperial father, think about it. If it was really his son who sent someone to assassinate his 6th brother, how could he leave such evidence at the scene? Imperial father. You have to believe me. I have never done such a thing. The Crown Prince glanced at the unlucky 3rd prince and sighed. Father, I also believe that this matter was not done by 3rd prince. The 3rd prince Mo Ting simply couldn't believe his ears. His younger brother, the Crown Prince, who was rumored to be like a spring breeze on the outside but was actually extremely cold and heartless on the inside, was actually pleading for him today? The old great king kept a straight face, a hint of disdain hanging from the corner of his mouth. He moved his leg and pulled it out of Mo Tang's embrace. There's no proof for this matter. I will send people to investigate thoroughly. From today onwards, stay in the 3rd prince's estate and don't come out until the truth comes to light. Noble consort Lin immediately collapsed to the ground and repeatedly cried, Your Majesty, the 3rd prince is innocent, Your Majesty. Your Majesty! The great king didn't want to listen anymore and instead angrily rebuked noble consort Lin, You're also grounded for 3 days. Properly reflect on what kind of son you taught. I've already replaced chapter 022. You guys can refresh the page that was booked before 8:15. It should be chapter 586 in the software. It doesn't matter if you book it now. Chapter 589. When the pitiful 3rd prince was chased out of the main hall by the great king, he only felt the cold wind blow by, and his body also shivered. The Crown Prince followed him out and sighed as he looked at him. 3rd royal brother, I believe you, but royal father won't listen to me either. When he saw that jade pendant, he insisted that it was 3rd royal brother who did it. 6th brother. The 3rd prince abruptly turned his head, wishing he could grab the Crown Prince's hand and pour out his heart. However, the Crown Prince raised his fist to his lips and pretended to cough twice, avoiding the 3rd prince's enthusiastic claws. 6th brother, you really have to believe me. I can swear an oath to the heavens. Mo Tang stuck out 2 fingers and swore. All right, 3rd royal brother, of course I believe you. The Crown Prince hastily interrupted his string of swearing, cursing him inwardly for being annoying. Can't you let me finish speaking? This idiot. He's so stupid that he doesn't even know how to refute and only knows how to swear. What's the use of that? No wonder he was framed. Noble consort Lin wiped her tears and said, Your Highness Crown Prince, I hope you can investigate clearly. Tang is devoted to your highness and definitely wouldn't do such a disobedient and immoral thing. Speaking of which, third royal brother was too careless. How could such a personal jade pendant fall into the hands of someone with intentions? Mo Lien sighed and glanced at Mo Teng. Actually, I originally had a very suspicious target in my heart. I could have mentioned it in front of royal father, but something like this happened to third royal brother. Mo Teng's ears twitched, and he hastily lowered his voice to ask, "Sixth brother, who do you suspect? Tell older brother in private so that older brother can have an idea. You also know that older brother isn't very astute and is easily confused." "Heh, why don't I say you're stupid?" the crown prince ridiculed in his heart. However, he was all smiles on the surface. The crown prince also lowered his voice. The two brothers leaned their heads together and whispered, "Third royal brother, actually, I feel that second royal brother is extremely suspicious. I also have a clue in my hands that points to him." Who knew that third royal brother's jade pendant would fall at the scene of the assassination? I can't help you explain yourself to imperial father." Mo Teng's face instantly turned green, and he smacked his thigh as if he had thought of something. He hurriedly said to the crown prince, "Sixth brother, elder brother thought of something, so I'll return to the estate first." Watching noble consort Lin and the third prince Mo Lien leave in a huff, Mo Lien muttered to herself, "Who has the time to play this kind of little game with you?" He didn't even have time to accompany his wife. This bunch of crooked melons and cracked dates, looking for trouble for him. Humph, he'll just let them fight amongst themselves. "Your Highness, is the second prince planning to do something?" Hui Feng whispered as he followed behind the crown prince. "Why not? I let him assassinate me for nothing." Our dear Mo Lien was filled with anger when he recalled the seductive scene that was interrupted inside the carriage. Seriously, this second prince was tired of living. Since he dared to play assassination with him, then he'll find more people to play with him to his heart's content. Didn't you say a while ago that a downtrodden royal grandson of West Chiu Kingdom fled to the second prince's estate? The crown prince waved his hand at Hui Feng and instructed him. Hui Feng's mouth twitched, and he nodded repeatedly before leaving to carry out the order. His master was digging a grave for his second highness. But who told his second highness to be so blind? Your second highness, you're on your own. Chapter 590. Second brother, do you know the consequences of provoking this crown prince? Prince Mo sneered. After walking slowly for a while, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. His expression froze for a moment, and his figure flashed as he rushed toward the Eastern Palace. She hadn't entered Paradise Planet to take a look for several days. Ever since that day she tracked the poison-tailed butterflies and got rid of a poison master. She had Sapling move all the poison-tailed butterflies into Paradise Planet. Now that she wanted to take a look, she had Sapling bring her into Paradise Planet. Chochio had specially opened up a separate poison garden for her, and even moved some of the poisonous flowers and herbs in the original medicinal field into that poison garden, completely separating it from the medicinal field. Now that she was strolling in the poison garden, she saw a group of colorful poison-tailed butterflies fluttering in the medicinal field. An enormous black shadow suddenly descended, flapping its wings as it flew toward her. Looking closely, the giant butterfly in front of her had already transformed into a human, with a pair of long and beautiful dark blue wings on its back. In the middle was the figure of a little lowly. This was the strange creature that had swooped down from the sky when she wanted to leave the Poison Master's courtyard that day. The queen of the poison-tailed butterflies had named her Xiao Xiao. Speaking of which, that pygmy poison master probably couldn't find peace in the underworld. The poison-tailed butterflies that he had nurtured his entire life were all taken in by this little fellow for her own use. The most interesting thing was that before he died, he didn't even get to see the poison-tailed butterfly queen. After the poison-tailed butterfly queen broke out of its cocoon, it happily pounced on classmate Arbor, directly acknowledging him as its master. Arbor thought that pygmy would probably cry injustice to the king of hell when he entered the underworld. Tilting his little head, Arbor waved at Xiao Xiao, who was fluttering her wings. Xiao Xiao happily shrunk her figure, turning into a butterfly as thick as a finger, and fluttered into Arbor's hand. She cutely called out, "Master, master, you've come to see me." "That's right. How are you and your little friends staying? This place is great. The mystic energy is rich, and we're free. It's too suitable for us to live in." Xiao Xiao happily fluttered her wings. "That's good." Arbor knew that her paradise planet was a good place to live, and the little fellows definitely wouldn't be dissatisfied. She was just asking casually. She stroked Xiao Xiao's wings. "Xiao Xiao, send some butterflies out with me. I want them to go somewhere to scout for information." "Yes, master." With a wave of Xiao Xiao's hand, 3 small black butterflies fluttered up to Qiao Mu, fluttering up and down. "Master, Xiao 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 Xiao, master," she said. "If there's anything you need, just tell them and they'll do it." "Xiao Xiao 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 Xiao." Qiao Mu nodded. Although her small stoic face was expressionless, the sapling Qiuqiu could tell that its little master was still very happy. "Master, master, I can also go out. I can also work for you." The water child dashed over and bounced several times in front of Qiao Mu. "No need. It's just a small matter. You can all stay here." "Wah, master, you'd better go out quickly. I can feel the Crown Prince's aura spreading over. He seems to be very angry," Qiuqiu said suddenly. Chapter 591. Xiao Xiao, I'll bring them out now. Remember to send me feedback from time to time. Arbor hurriedly had Qiuqiu send her out. Almost at the same time, she felt the Crown Prince's raging aura approach. With a whoosh, his figure landed in the bedchamber. He panicked. He hurried all the way back. But when he entered the Eastern Palace and saw the slender figure, he was clearly stunned. He looked her up and down in a daze. His entire heart seemed to settle down, and his expression relaxed slightly. "Where did you go just now?" Emo Lien appeared beside her in a flash and pulled her into his embrace. Qiao Mu blinked her eyes. I'm telling you, if you disappear without a word like this again, I'll tie you to my side one day and not allow you to leave my side." Emo Lien lowered his head and was about to bite the little fellow's mouth. Our dear Qiao Mu hurriedly reached out a small paw to block his lips and silently communicated with the sapling. "Can you bring Emo Lien into Paradise Planet now?" No. Last time, Qiuqiu was almost exhausted from bringing in so many living creatures from the outside world. The Crown Prince is such a big person. Let's wait a while. Arbor's eyes curved suspiciously. "Only one person. Last time, you brought in so many butterflies, but they were fine. Other than Master, living people are the hardest to bring in. It's another matter if they're dead." Scram. "Who are you talking about dying?" Arbor's beautiful brows immediately furrowed. No, I didn't say anything. The Crown Prince's cultivation is so high, how could anything happen to him? Wow, Master is so scary. She quickly smoothed things over. "Actually, Master, as long as your cultivation increases, it won't be so difficult to bring in living creatures in the future," Qiuqiu immediately said fawningly. "I believe in Master. It won't take long for you to have a big breakthrough." In Paradise Planet, Butterfly Queen Xiao Xiao looked at the fawning Trey Ant with disdain. She unhappily flapped her wings and returned to her poison garden. "Why aren't you saying anything?" The Crown Prince reached out and held her small chin. His eyes were slightly suspicious as he looked at the silent little fellow in front of him. "You disappeared just now." For a moment, just like 2 years ago, he could no longer catch her aura. This made him very anxious, and he hurriedly rushed to the Eastern Palace, afraid that the little fellow would disappear without a word, and that they would not see each other for many years. "Why aren't you saying anything?" The Crown Princess increased the force in her hands slightly, causing Arbor, who was communicating with Qiuqiu, to come back to his senses. "Jojo, you're not allowed to run." He lifted her up and looked her in the eye. "Can you not run?" "Where did I go?" Arbor looked at him speechlessly. It was all her fault that her cultivation wasn't high enough. If she could bring him to Paradise Planet to take a look, wouldn't everything be clear at a glance? She ran away. He leaned over and bit her lips. Just now. Let's not run anymore, okay? Running makes me nervous. Next time, if I can't feel your presence, I'll take measures against you, okay? Apui, what measures do you want to take? Abba struggled in his arms, but failed to break free. She angrily bared her little white teeth and bit him. The Crown Prince, this shameless person, hurriedly adjusted his position and said with a smile, "Come, don't bite the wrong place." The two people's 4 lips met. The 6th watch ended. If I'm even later, you don't have to wait for me. It'll be different tomorrow. I even made some mistakes in my busy schedule today. It took me some time to find the editor to edit the chapters. That's it, let's see if I can update earlier tomorrow. Chapter 592. Splash. A trickle of water splashed onto Prince Mo's face. Abba's little finger was encircled by a ring of clear spring water, glistening and flowing back and forth between her fingertips. At this moment, the handsome and otherworldly Crown Prince Mo was looking at her in bewilderment with a head full of water, his long hair dripping wet. This appearance. Abba couldn't help but snicker, and then burst out laughing. Emolien looked at her in a daze for a while, then suddenly hugged her tightly and said excitedly, "Jojo, Jojo, you smiled at Jojo. Look at this fool, was it worth it to be so happy just because she smiled?" He wanted to grab her and fly up. Abba reached out a pair of little claws and rubbed his wet face, a faint gentleness flashing through her big eyes. "You're wet, go take a bath." "Okay, then you should sleep early. Don't worry about the palace banquet tomorrow night, I'll go with you." Prince Mo rubbed the little fellow's forehead. Abba snorted. "I'm not worried at all. It's others who should be worried. If someone is blind enough to provoke me, humph, I'll help you hit them back." Prince Mo immediately agreed without any restraint. Abba pursed her watery lips, her eyes shining brightly. She poked his chest with a finger. "I'll hit them myself." Okay, hit them yourself. My Jojo is so powerful, you definitely won't be at a disadvantage." Prince Mo flicked his sleeves, and the water on his body was dried by an invisible fire. He placed her on the bed, held her little hand and asked, "What was that just now?" "It's the power of the essence water that I fused with." Abba tilted her little head to look at him. "It's just that my cultivation isn't high enough now, so I can only control this much water." "Very good." There was a hint of a smile in the Crown Prince's eyes as he rubbed her head. "You've yet to break through to the spirit realm, but you already control the most powerful water spirit, the holy spirit water that can crush 9th level spirit water. When you break through to the spirit realm, you'll naturally be able to use it with ease." 9th layer spiritual water. Abba had never heard of it before and was curious. That's right, 9th layer spiritual water. When breaking through to level 15 Great Mystic Cultivator Realm, as long as one can comprehend one of the 5 spirits, they can enter the spirit realm. The Crown Prince explained, but normal mystic cultivators can only comprehend the 1st to 5th levels of the 5 spirits. Those who were able to comprehend the 6th level of spirit fire and water were all extraordinarily talented individuals within the spirit realm. You have surpassed the comprehension of the 9th level of spiritual water. I didn't comprehend anything. I can use the power of water after fusing with the essence water. The little fellow's explanation made a certain Crown Prince's mouth twitch. Yes. My Jojo is amazing. The Crown Prince laid her down and covered her with the blanket with a grin. He leaned over and gently kissed her forehead. "Go to sleep." "Where are you sleeping?" Abba suddenly asked. "Are you keeping me?" The Crown Prince was startled, and a mischievous smile immediately surfaced on his lips. "The bed is quite big, so we can squeeze and sleep together. Pretend I didn't say anything." Darling Chow pulled the blanket over her little head and shrank inside, wrapping herself into a cocoon. The man chuckled softly and reached over to pull the blanket over her, insisting on pulling her little head out of the blanket. All right, hurry and sleep. Don't suffocate yourself. Be good, okay? Chirp. Receiving a kiss on her little face, the little one muttered and turned her face away. Chapter 593. Sleep well, there's no rush to wake up early. Tomorrow when I'm done, I'll come back and tell you a big joke. The Crown Prince narrowed his eyes and smiled. He reached out to tuck the little fellow in before leaving, until his bamboo-like figure gradually disappeared from the window outside the bedchamber. Abba continued to stare in a daze. She suddenly shrank her head into the blanket and reached out to touch her slightly hot little face. His words lingered in her heart, and not long after, she poked her head out of the blanket. She was as timid as a small animal in the snowy night, her eyes especially bright in the dark night. There was only one candle lit in the corner of the room, and the faint yellow light spread out. After tossing and turning for a while, she didn't know when she fell asleep. When she opened her eyes, it was already late in the morning. Xiao Yao heard her movements and immediately walked over with a smile. She helped her freshen up and change her clothes with a smile on her face. Little mistress, did you sleep well last night? Not bad. Abba pursed her lips. She thought that the Crown Prince must have given her some medicine, otherwise, how could she sleep so soundly later on? That's great. Xiao Yao took out a red dress for her to change into. She said, Her Majesty the Queen is holding a small banquet tonight to see Little Mistress. Little Mistress, you don't have to worry too much. Her Majesty the Queen is an especially forgiving person. Abba fiddled with the jade beads in her hand and said with a childish attitude, If she doesn't treat me well, I'll ignore her. Xiao Yao almost laughed out loud. She fiddled with her hair. Comb it again tonight. It's still early, so let's leave it like this for now. Does little mistress want to eat now? I'm not that hungry. I'll go read for a while. I'll just get some snacks later. It's better to eat some staple food. No need. I'll eat later. Get more food. After eating, I'll go to that whatever palace banquet. The little fellow waved her hand. She hugged the book and ran to the brocade couch by the window to read. Xiao Yao was a bit dumbfounded. After staring blankly for a while, she couldn't help but want to laugh. Little Master wanted to eat his fill so that he could join the battle later. Emolien didn't come back until the evening. Abba saw her, put down his book and ran over. I've finished reading all the medical books. You can send them back now. It's snowing outside again. Emolien was very wet all the way, so he didn't go forward to hug her. Instead, he prepared to change his clothes. All right, send it back and see if there are any other medical books in the Imperial Physicians Building. Speaking of which, it was really funny. The old doctors of the Imperial Physician Building actually jointly wrote a letter to complain about him in front of his imperial father. The old great king even called the Crown Prince over and reprimanded him. But in the end, the Crown Prince still didn't return the book to the Imperial Physician, so the matter was left unsettled. The little fellow followed closely behind him. Then let's eat. Emolien took off his outer robe and changed into a clean one. He reached out to hug her. Are you hungry? Set the table. Yes, Your Highness. Xiao 11Z retreated and gave the order. I'm not that hungry, right? The little fellow had just chewed on a peach. She rubbed her stomach. It's only when I'm full that I have the strength to beat people up. She had a feeling that this banquet was going to be a torturous one. That's why she had to eat her fill in advance so that she wouldn't have to listen to some people's chatter when she was hungry. The Crown Prince, what should he do when his wife didn't rely on him at all? Beating people up was so tiring. Did he need his wife to do it? Chapter 594. That's right. I had nothing to do this afternoon, so I roasted 2 fish for you. But it's cold now, so let Xiao Yao heat it up for us to eat. Since he liked to hold her, she was too lazy to walk by herself. The two of them sat on the embroidered couch. Emolien turned the little girl's face and looked at her with a smile. Jojo is so capable. Can't do it. Abba frowned. It doesn't taste good, and it's a bit burnt. You should roast it next time. It was also because these fish were born and bred in Paradise Star's lake, so it was a pity to waste their rich, profound energy. Otherwise, she would have thrown them away. Jojo's cooking is delicious. As she spoke, Xiao Yao smiled and brought people forward to serve the dishes. 2 slightly burnt fish. Emolien was a bit surprised when she took the first bite. The profound energy wrapped around the fish was very rich, as if these fish had been raised in some profound realm for a long time. He glanced at her and didn't say anything. Thinking about the peaches that the little girl had taken out earlier, he thought that this little fellow must have had a fortuitous encounter. After the two of them finished eating, Xiao Yao went forward to tidy up Abba's clothes and hair again. Only then did the two of them leave the door and board the carriage, heading towards the central palace. At this time, the snowflakes were a bit heavy. Abba reached out a hand to the curtain and watched the snowflakes fall on her palm, sparkling brightly. Her brows moved slightly. She thought of the Spirit Division Records Technique chapter, which recorded a strange technique related to the water spirit. Using water to condense ice, ice to melt snow, ice as needles, ice as arrows, and snow as fragments of dust. It could harm people invisibly. With her current cultivation, she couldn't use the water spirit's power in a large area. If she could secretly use it in a small area, she would be able to obtain a strange victory in battle. The Crown Prince saw her sitting in the carriage silently staring at the 6-chestnut snowflake in her palm. He couldn't help but raise his brows and whisper a word to the driver. The snow in her palm suddenly melted into a bit of water, and then a small stream of water emerged from her palm. It didn't turn into ice for a long time, and Abba's forehead condensed a trace of sweat. The carriage quietly walked on the palace road. Without Abba's knowledge, it took a long detour and slowly headed toward the central palace. Condensing water into ice was easier said than done. It was impossible for her to be born with the ability to change the form of water and easily condense water into ice. Chocho's assistance would always be an assistance. Only when she could control the water manipulation ability would it be her own power. This required her to try again and again to test the waters and put in more effort. Because she had fused the life essence water, she might have a success rate that was more than 10 times higher than others. However, she still needed to constantly try to solidify it. There was nothing that could be easily obtained. The Crown Prince stared at her with a smile on his lips. His Chow Chow was truly a person with outstanding innate talent. Even a snowstorm could open the door to enlightenment for her. This kind of comprehension ability was already one of a kind in this world. After an hour, Abba grasped the essentials. Under her control, a small stream of water condensed into a piece of sparkling ice crystal. In a flash, this piece of ice crystal turned into a 6-chestnut snowflake, flashing in her hand. When she suddenly raised her hand, it suddenly flew out. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The snowflakes cut through several nearby trees. After the carriage moved far away, the trees split from the middle. The upper half of the branches suddenly fell to the ground and split into 2 pieces. Abba sighed and turned to meet the Crown Prince's smiling gaze. I just got home. You don't have to wait for me until 11 o'clock. Chapter 595. This kind of control over the water spirit can absolutely be considered as a gift blessed by the heavens. Emolien pinched her small face. After all, his little one hadn't even broken through to the spiritual realm. Using the water spirit required spiritual energy as a guide at the very least, right? However, this little one broke all the rules. No level 11 mystic cultivator could use mystic energy to control the water spirit. This wasn't as simple as skipping levels to control it. This little one was definitely an oddball. If she wasn't exceptionally gifted, then what was she? The Crown Prince looked proud as he warmed up the little one's slightly cold hand. Then are we late? Arbor looked up at him when she saw that the sky had already turned completely dark. It's a special situation. I've already sent someone to report to Mother Queen's brilliant Sun Hall, the Crown Prince said with a smile. Then will your mother think that I was late on purpose? Although the little one looked aloof on the outside and didn't say many things, she was actually an especially soft and meticulous person. Sometimes, she thought a lot, but she wouldn't say it all out loud. Her intuition toward people was also especially sharp. She could almost instantly determine who was good to her and who was hostile to her. Mo Lien could already sense her slight uneasiness, so she quickly held her small hand and rubbed it. Mother Queen is a very magnanimous person, so don't be nervous. Besides, I'll always be by your side no matter what happens. We'll always stand together. I'm not nervous, Arbor said with a stoic face. If your mother doesn't treat me well, I won't talk to her. Prince Mo looked at this darling, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. All right, then I won't talk to her either. Let's both ignore her. Mo Lien nodded solemnly. Xiao, 11Z and the other eunuchs and royal maids accompanying them almost staggered and knelt on the ground. Oh my, their Lord Crown Prince was originally a very willful and reckless person. Now, the Crown Princess seemed to be 100 times more willful than their lord. What were they going to do in the future? Wouldn't their days be abnormally lively? Xiao Mu turned to look at him and harumphed, non-committally disagreeing with his words. The carriage did not take any more detours and quickly stopped at the entrance of the middle palace. The two of them got out of the carriage and didn't use the palanquin. Instead, they held hands and slowly walked through the snow. Xiao 11Z quickly opened up an umbrella and called for the palace maids on the side to hastily hold umbrellas for their two willful masters. Along the way, the roofs and trees on both sides of the road were already covered in a thin layer of snow white. If this snow continued for the whole night, it would definitely accumulate again tomorrow. Inside the brilliant Sun Hall where the Queen was holding a banquet. A group of noble ladies with titles and daughters-in-law from aristocratic families were already seated, waiting for the banquet to begin. The Queen was dressed in a golden and red robe with layers of clouds embroidered on the hem. She sat upright on the seat of honor, drinking tea leisurely from beginning to end, not saying a word. There were only a few whispers below, and no one dared to say anything. Until the announcement of Consort Zheng's arrival broke the apparent tranquility of the palace. All of the noble ladies with titles and daughters-in-law from aristocratic families stood up and bowed, saying in unison, "Greetings to Consort Zheng." Her Highness Consort Zheng, who had a slender waist and a voluptuous and tall figure, was dressed in a long red dress with rippling ripples. She wore a gorgeous hairpin with 8 treasures and pearls in her hair. With the help of the palace maids, she gracefully swayed her way to the first seat below the seat of honor. The top-grade pearls hanging next to her cheeks clanked as they bumped against each other as she walked. Instead, she looked coldly at the couple entering the hall hand in hand. Who knew how many people's gazes they had attracted on their way here? The Crown Prince and the Crown Princess were dressed in red as they walked in hand, looking very eye-catching. The man was tall and slender, handsome like an exquisite piece of jade, while the girl was icy and beautiful like the cold moon. No one could find a single flaw in their appearances, so much so that everyone couldn't help but think the same thing in their minds when they saw this scene. A match made in heaven. Mu Qianqian felt like she was sitting on pins and needles, as if there were 17 to 18 needles poking her under her butt. She shifted her body uneasily, and her malicious eyes glared straight at the red-clothed little lady who was walking past her. So hateful. Was it her? The lowly lass who suddenly appeared out of nowhere and stole her crown princess position. Mu Qianqian completely didn't recognize that she had seen Arbor in the Qin estate before. At that time, Arbor was still in disguise, so her current appearance was naturally worlds apart. Chapter 597. Abruptly, Arbor turned his head, and his icy eyes apathetically shot a vicious glance at Mu Qianqian. That glance made one's heart tremble with fear, as if it could kill a person on the spot with a single glance. That was a ruthless attack that our dear Chiao Mu had used her spiritual conscious to directly infiltrate the other party's conscious. Was this darling someone that any Tom, Dick, or Harry could stare at? Mu Qianqian immediately felt her mind go blank, and a piercing pain assaulted her brain. With a shriek, she fell backward. The people sitting behind her were precisely the second branch's mother and daughter, Madame Nei Lu and Mu Jilan. Caught off guard, Mu Qianqian knocked over the entire small table, and all the soup and water spilled onto them. The second branch's mother and daughter immediately shrieked and jumped up, attracting Her Majesty the Queen's stern gaze from the head seat. The young misses nearby all covered their mouths and chuckled as they looked disdainfully at the Mu family's mother and daughter who were jumping up and down. Madame Nei Lu's heart jolted, and she hastily pulled her daughter Mu Jilan forward to kneel. "This commoner and my daughter have been disrespectful in front of your Majesty the Queen. It's truly because eldest miss suddenly attacked, and this commoner and my daughter were caught off guard." Mu Qianqian also hastily knelt forward and cried pitifully, "Your Majesty is wise." Just now, when she passed by Qianqian, she used some kind of witchcraft to glare fiercely at Qianqian, which caused me to suddenly lose my balance and fall backward. As she spoke, Mu Qianqian raised her sleeve to point at Arber's back. "Slap her." The Crown Prince abruptly turned around and shouted sternly. Mu Qianqian's eyes bulged in shock as she dumbfoundedly looked at His Highness the Crown Prince, who had suddenly turned hostile and merciless. Just as an indoctrination nanny was about to step forward and press down on Mu Qianqian with a wooden plank, Mu Qianqian wailed, "Your Majesty the Queen, Your Majesty the Queen, Qianqian doesn't know what she did wrong to anger His Highness the Crown Prince. Is the Crown Princess someone a wicked commoner like you can casually point fingers at? What her? Who is she?" The Crown Prince glared at the indoctrination nanny who had stopped and said ruthlessly, "Don't you know how to hit her? Do you want us to do it personally? Double it." The indoctrinating nanny's heart shuddered, and she promptly slapped Mu Qianqian's mouth with the paddle. After 3 hits, Mu Qianqian's originally glossy and seductive red lips broke, and tears streamed down her face like beads from a broken necklace. When Queen Zhao saw this, she couldn't bear it anymore. The Queen previously had 3 or 4 Crown Princess and secondary consort candidates that she favored, and one of them was this Mu Qianqian. Although Mu Qianqian's father wasn't an official in the imperial court, he was the family head of one of the capital's 8 great patrician families, the Talisman patrician family. Moreover, it was said that this Talisman aristocratic family was a branch family of a Talisman aristocratic family in the Divine Prefecture. Their influence was absolutely not to be underestimated. That was the mysterious divine land that was praised by tens of thousands of people. Compared to the Shuntian manor behind Consort Zheng, it was naturally 1 level higher. If the Crown Prince were to marry the daughter of such an aristocratic family, it would definitely be of great help to him. The other few were also daughters of high-ranking officials or daughters of aristocratic families. Their looks and knowledge were all very good, so they were more than qualified to be secondary consorts. However, she didn't expect that father and son pair to pull off such a stunt and casually settle on the Crown Princess candidate. At this time, the Queen was currently sizing up this Crown Princess. She saw that she was only 14 or 15 years old, but her small face was glistening, snow-white, and jade-like. However, what was up with that expressionless small face? "I'm done for today. I'll try my best to add more chapters tomorrow. I've always been writing 6 chapters a day. Older sister, I, had to take 3 days of leave to write the first 10 chapters. How could I take leave every day? Wouldn't I get hacked by my boss? Other than writing chapters in my spare time, I basically don't leave the house at all. Of course, I'm already cut off from TV and games. I've already done my best. I don't even have time to save chapters when the editor told me to. Ow." Chapter 598. Greetings to Royal Mother. Prince Imo walked up while holding Jojo's small hand and curtsied to his mother. After witnessing the Crown Prince's severe punishment of Mu Qianqian, the group of royal concubines, madams, and noble ladies all tacitly understood that the crown prince attached great importance to this consort. No one would continue to idiotically provoke this crown princess's dignity in front of the crown prince. Therefore, they all obediently curtsied to the crown prince and crown princess. Our dear Qiao Lin, who was at the back of the crowd, couldn't help but twist her small body in excitement. Her mother, Wei Ziqin, patted her small hand lightly and shot her a warning glance before she finally settled down. Wei Ziqin had arrived early with her daughter, but her eldest daughter didn't show up even after waiting for a long time. Now that she saw the crown prince personally escorting her eldest daughter over and even defending her in front of others, she couldn't help but be extremely delighted. She liked this son-in-law no matter how she looked at him. Queen Zhao was a protective mother, so she naturally wouldn't embarrass her son in front of everyone. Even if she disapproved of our dear Qiao Lin's stoic face, she naturally wouldn't show it on the surface. She had them dispense with the formalities with a chuckle and secretly cast a glance at her son. Truly, her son had grown up and she couldn't do as she wished. Could it be that she would eat the crown princess up? She even specially sent the crown princess over. She couldn't see how this little lady was worthy of her peerlessly outstanding son. She could tell at a glance that this young lady had an icy temperament. Her small face didn't even have the slightest hint of a smile when facing the elders. Heaven knew how much her son would suffer from chasing after her. When she thought of how such a good son would suffer grievances in front of a young lady, Queen Zhao didn't feel good about it. In Queen Zhao's opinion, her son was the best in the world. When young ladies saw him, they should be like Mu Qianqian and the likes, swarming over like bees. How could they be like darling Qiao, indifferent and expressionless all day long? Our dear Qiao Lin keenly detected a trace of dissatisfaction coming from the queen's direction, and she looked up with a frown at the queen with sparkling eyes. What the heck? You actually dare to frown at me? Queen Zhao kept complaining in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face. All right, leave your crown princess behind. The queen grumbled in annoyance and glanced at the crown prince. The crown prince nodded with a smile. Then this subject will come back in 2 hours to bring the crown princess back. Queen Zhao wished she could send the crown prince flying with a smack of the back of his head. Her expression was simply brilliant. The expressions of the other concubines and noble ladies were also quite interesting. Could these women eat the crown princess or something? Wasn't it just a small banquet in the palace? The crown prince was still worried about sending her back and forth. She was really a delicate girl. It looked very worrisome. Queen Zhao was thunderstruck by the stoic face again. The stoic face was expressionless from beginning to end. When she heard the crown prince say he was going to pick her up, she took it as a matter of course. Just as everyone was madly ridiculing her in their hearts, they saw the little stoic turn around and say to the crown prince, "How about an hour? I'm sleepy." The crown prince nodded happily and patted the little fellow's head. Okay. Queen Zhao and all the concubines were flabbergasted. Consort Zhang couldn't resist laughing out loud and mocking. The crown princess really is delicate beyond belief. You just came to attend the banquet and want to leave immediately? Where are you putting Her Majesty the Queen's face? Hee hee. The little stoic turned to look at Consort Zhang and creased her brows. You are the queen. Chapter 599. Consort Zhang was dumbstruck for a moment before retorting angrily, I am Consort Zhang. Your mistress hasn't even said anything yet, so why are you, a concubine, spouting so much nonsense? You don't even know the slightest bit of etiquette. Arbor irritably prodded her and turned her head away, no longer looking at her. This time, everyone was truly shocked. It was fine if the crown princess didn't say anything, but the moment she opened her mouth, she verbally attacked Consort Zhang. She truly wasn't the slightest bit polite. Consort Zhang gnashed her teeth, wishing for nothing more than to slap Arbor's expressionless little stoic face. However, she still had some IQ and knew that the crown prince was here. If she dared to lay a hand on the crown princess, she would definitely be sent flying by the crown prince, who was protective of his own. Thus, no matter how much she ground her teeth, she endured it and didn't make a move. She merely brushed past the crown princess in an unpleasant tone and said to Queen Zhao, "Your Majesty the Queen, the crown princess dares to speak so rudely in front of you and torment us concubine mothers. I really don't know what other outrageous things the crown princess would do if you weren't present." Crown princess. The queen put on an act and berated, "How can you be so rude to the noble consort? The noble consort is also a concubine." A trace of impatience hung on the little stoic's face. "She speaks so much, aren't you going to discipline her a bit? You're going to let her jump up and down like a grasshopper. You don't find it annoying, but I do. I don't want to talk to her, so please make her shut up." Queen Zhao was actually left speechless. A pretty and delicate girl about 18 or 19 years old abruptly laughed out loud. Immediately after, she attracted a slight glare from her lady mother, and the girl playfully stuck out her tongue before closing her small mouth. She then secretly winked in Arba's direction. "That's 8th sister Mou. She has a good temper. If you're bored, you can go find her to play." Mo Lien curled his lips as he whispered while tugging at Xiao Qiao's small hand. Consort Zheng's expression could no longer be described as ugly. A layer of dark clouds was smeared on her pretty face. Her eyes revealed a bit of viciousness as she coldly stared at this little slut who dared to speak nonsense and ruthlessly trample on her imperial concubine face. Very good. How many years had it been since someone had dared to speak to her in such a disrespectful tone? That slut who dared to provoke her imperial concubine had long been drowned at the bottom of the pond in the imperial garden and turned into a pile of mud. She couldn't be more dead. The crown princess, this little b*tch, just because the crown prince doted on her, she dared to look down on her. She wanted her to regret coming to this world. Jung He, you are glaring at our crown princess like this. Are you dissatisfied with her? The crown prince suddenly spoke in an icy tone. Consort Zheng's body immediately chilled, and she hurriedly retracted her gaze. She forced a smile and said, "Your Highness the crown prince must be joking. How could this concubine dare to be like this?" After speaking, she rubbed her forehead and pretended to have a headache. She said delicately to Queen Zhao, "Your Majesty the Queen, please forgive younger sister. Younger sister has a headache and will take her leave first." What a disrespectful concubine. Darling Qiao said with a cold expression, "You just came to the banquet and already want to leave? Haha. Where are you putting Her Majesty the Queen's face?" This completely threw Consort Zheng's words back at her. The imperial concubine was so angry that she fell backwards and was quickly supported by 2 palace maids. Everyone, Queen Zhao's mouth twitched fiercely as she solemnly sized up the little girl. Chapter 600. Consort Zheng's favor in the imperial harem had never declined. It could be said that she had covered half the sky with a single hand for so many years, but Queen Zhao had never seen her suffer such a setback in recent years. Now that she saw her trembling from anger after hearing a few words from the crown princess, Queen Zhao needed to take a good look at this daughter-in-law of hers. She was truly a capable person. This child was young and appeared to be very aloof. She didn't seem to speak much, but unexpectedly, her venomous words could infuriate someone to death. Queen Zhao glanced at a certain person who was so angry that her chest was heaving up and down slightly. Her lower lip inwardly twitched, and a faint smile appeared on her face. Jung He had been domineering for many years, and it was rare to meet a young lady who could infuriate her half to death with a single word. Needless to say, Queen Zhao was secretly pleased. Looking at Arba's stoic little face, she found her somewhat pleasing to the eye. The young lady that her son liked was definitely extraordinary. Queen Zhao thought to herself, "I'll just observe for now. Royal mother, then this son will take his leave first. I'll come back to pick up my crown princess in an hour." The crown prince held Arba's small hand and even escorted her to her seat. Only then did he bow to the queen and take his leave. Queen Zhao really wanted to pick up the teacup next to her and throw it at his head. This stinky son, he really only gave her an hour to interact with him. After the crown prince finished bowing and exhorted his little wife, he flicked his sleeves and left. Naturally, he also took away the infatuated gazes of the numerous young ladies in Brilliant Sun Hall. Queen Zhao didn't know what to say. She felt that she had raised a son for nothing. Consort Zhang originally wanted to flick her sleeves and leave, but after the queen said, "Younger sister, are you really not giving this consort face like the crown princess said?" she could only grit her teeth and sit down next to Consort Cheng. Her handkerchief was twisted so tightly in her hand that it was almost about to be torn to shreds. Noble Consort Zhang, the crown prince consort is still young, and it looks like she has an innocent and unaffected temperament, so don't bicker with her. Consort Cheng drank a mouthful of tea as she said this to noble Consort Zhang with a chuckle. Consort Zhang didn't say anything, but there was a cold smile on her lips. On the other end, after Mu Chanqian was scolded, her mouth was already completely rotten. Madame Mu couldn't bear it and wiped her tears, but she didn't dare to take her daughter away at this time. She could only watch her daughter sit there with a rotten mouth, as if sitting on pins and needles, and accept the malicious sneers of the noble ladies around her. Mu Chanqian cast a resentful gaze at Auber from time to time. Her entire heart was rather uncomfortable when she saw that lofty person sitting in the first seat below the queen. It was all because of that slut that the crown prince punished her in public, making her unable to raise her head in front of everyone. The mother and daughter of the Mu family's second branch didn't have it easy either. Their heads were drenched in soup, and they were only wiping them slightly, so their complexions weren't good right now. During this small banquet, the Mu family simply became the laughingstock in the eyes of all the noble ladies in the capital. Today's small banquet was held to let you all recognize the crown princess. The queen said dryly, "The crown princess mother, please step forward." Wei Ziqin stepped forward and performed a proper curtsy. "This subject greets your majesty." The queen casually praised the crown princess a couple of times insincerely and also bestowed many gifts to Wei Ziqin, giving the Qiao family enough face. Only then did she have her withdraw to continue eating. Consort Zheng's cold gaze roved over Wei Ziqin's face, but she feigned silence while holding her cup. At this time, a woman suddenly stood up and curtsied to the queen. "Today, I will write a reward for you guys. Let's see when the time comes." You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.